Good evening, what's up? I hope you guys enjoyed my recent 3 videos I made. This is my final video, guys. I'm done after this. Alright, so the CFL did hit 500 million revenue. Yeah. If the CFL hit 500 million revenue, the league will be able to raise the cap to like 9 million. And at $9 million cap, star quarterbacks can now make their $1 million in the CFL. Even $1.2, $1.3 million in the CFL. And receivers can make $600K, $500K, $400K. Defensive players can make $300, $350, $400, $450K. With that money, a lot of star CFL players will decline NFL opportunities because they're making more than enough money up here. Obviously, guys from Sarah. That's why CFL's trying their best to grow it to that money, but they've been struggling to grow to that money. Either fans in Canada just don't care about Canadian football, or there's a bigger market for it, but it's for the Canadian product, not the American product, right? So that works, right? Are the CFL players the most underpaid pro athletes in the world? Oh yeah, they are. CFL players are the most underpaid pro athletes in the world. They work just as hard as all these other pro athletes, but they get paid way less money because football is not that popular in Canada. That's why they're underpaid, right? Are CFL players worth the millions, Ivan? No, they're not. Why, Ivan? Because there isn't that big of a demand for the market for football in Canada is not that big. That's why they're not worth them. Except for the quarterbacks. The quarterbacks are worth maybe about $1 million. The starting quarterbacks in the CFL. But the other players are not worth their millions. They're worth like their hundreds of thousands. 200, 300, 400, 500K, 600K. They're worth that, but they're not worth the millions because football is not popular in Canada. The market for football in Canada is not that big. That's why the players are not worth it. Even the best Canadian players are not worth their millions. They're worth their hundreds of thousands because football is not that popular in Canada. That's why they're not worth their millions, obviously. Yeah. And the American players the C4 brings up here are not the best players in America. That's another reason why I don't believe they're worth their millions, right? They're not worth their millions because they're not like the best. They're not the best talent playing, like the best American talent playing in the CFL right now. But even the best name players are not worth their millions. Because football's not popular in Canada, right? Oh. Yeah. So CFL sees it as risky. Yeah. If we get rid of the American talent, the quality would dip by maybe 2%, and less people will be interested in the games. Obviously, but I told you, CFL, it's not about the quality of your game; it's something else. Obviously, because you've been putting on quality football for decades, and your league is only peaking at, after, I don't know, 60, 70 years since you started the league, your league is only peaking at $300 million. That's minimal growth. So something's not right. The fans in Canada usually just don't care about Canadian football. It was a bigger market for it, but it's with your Canadian star players. That's the answer, honestly. Canadian talent. Obviously. The CFLs would blind see it, obviously. Because they're blind by the American talent. Yeah, we're blind by the American talent. Even they're so talented, we gotta bring the guys up here right now, these stars. Yeah, very good way of growing a league, man. You want to grow the league with American product and with players who never want to be, because they're only here by default. And some of the players you're marketing to the people in Canada, CFL, they're using your CFL as a farm league to get an NFL shot. Which really, really pisses me off that some of these players are doing that, right? They're stars up here, the fans love them, and the CFL and CFL panel talks about them. You never hear from them again because they left to the NFL, so they use the CFL as a farm league to get an NFL shot. Now, a lot of American players do that, obviously. The agents tell them to do that. Hey, you didn't get your NFL opportunity, sign the CFL, hopefully if you kill the league, you can get another NFL shot. They use the CFL, some of these American players, right? CFL doesn't care. Yeah, we know how, we don't care. That's how we go to the league. They're talented. If we lose in the NFL, we can just grab more guys from the States. Yeah, and like you wonder why the league's not growing, CFL. Yeah. Yeah. Ivan, it's cold, man. I know it's cold. It's really shit up here in Canada. Only people that does this, by the way, right? Or by their own draft picks are not the stars. They just bring up players from a different country and have them be the stars instead of their own draft picks because they don't think their draft picks are good enough to put on quality football for the people of Canada because they envy the NFL's talent pool. And they're trying to be the NFL of Canada. We're trying to be the NFL of Canada. Ivan, is the Canadian talent good enough? Yes, they're amazing players, but when you compare it to the NFL's talent, you see a clear difference in quality. There's like a 14% dip in quality from the best Canadian players to the best American players in the NFL. Ivan, like they're amazing players, but when we compare it to the NFL, it's not good enough, Ivan. It's a letdown, a bit of a letdown. That's why they were bringing out leftover guys and how to be the stars up here. Yeah, that's why CFL does that. Yeah. That's why CFL does that. Duh. Yeah, Ivan, like the American players put on a show on television. That's why we have to be the stars up here. Yeah. Well, they've been putting on a show for decades, CFL, and your league is only peaking at $300 million, and it's staying at that rate. The CFL has minimal growth. Like the league revenue is not really increasing. It's staying at like at a fixed rate, man. They have no growth, and the CFL has no growth, man. No financial growth. Yeah, I know in the state of the league, the CFL commissioner, they always do their very best to act like the league has substantial growth, but it's all bullshit, right? Our television ratings have increased by like 20,000 or something. Like that makes a difference, right? They say that the league has increased like 12 million. The league has done 12 million more in revenue. Like 12 million revenue, CFL is nothing. That's not growth, obviously. What do you think it's growth? Growth is at least like 30, 40 million a season. If your league's doing 30, 40 million more a season, then that's good growth. If it's doing 10, 12 million in increase in a season, that's not really growth. Obviously. Yeah. I saw some of the CFL State of the League. The CFL commissioner, like, they admit, yeah, the CFL is struggling, obviously. And they always say how we can't compete with the NHL and all that stuff. But they act like as if the league is very successful. They say, yeah, the CFL is second to the NHL in TV ratings. It used to be, the CFL used to be number 2 in TV ratings, but not anymore. The NFL beats the CFL even in Canada, man. NFL is even more popular than the CFL in Canada. Obviously, yeah, more popular than CFL in Canada than the NFL. People in Canada are more interested in watching the NFL than they are the CFL. Obviously, in Canada too. NFL is not popular in Canada, but it's more popular than even the CFL now. Before the CFL used to be more popular than the NFL in Canada, but not anymore. NFL beats up the CFL in rating, television ratings in Canada. Yeah, man, it's sad. Oh my god. Yeah. That's why the CFL just keeps bringing up all these American guys. Because if we can put on amazing quality football almost as good as the NFL, hopefully, and it's entertaining football, hopefully the fans are entertained, and that's how we grow the league. I get that CFL. The American players are very talented, but they're unfamiliar product that you're trying to sell to the people of Canada. People don't know anything about these guys. You have to know CFL stars, the fans love them and everything, and they know them and everything, but like they don't know anything about their history. They don't even know where they even came from. Like they're American from a different country. But the CFL is relying blindly on the American talent putting on a show on television to grow the league. Regardless if they're unfamiliar product, they don't care. Yeah, we don't care. Even though they're unknown to the Canadian people, they're talented. They put a show on television. When they come, CFL stars, the fans love them. That's how we grow the league. Yeah, I get that CFL, but some of these guys who you're marketing as star players to Canadian people who you're trying to sell are players who are using your CFL as a farm league to get another NFL shot. So it's like, it's a very weird way of growing the league with players who never wanted to be here. They're only here by default. And some of them are using your league as a farm league to get another NFL shot. Instead of the best Canadian players, the Canadian players are not using the CFL as a farm league. The CFL is their league that their dreams playing here. Pro football here in Canada. Whereas the American players, even though the CFL is not a minor league, it's its own Canadian pro league up here in Canada. It's kind of viewed as a minor league because a lot of these American star players are some of them use the CFL as a farm league to get another NFL shot. Even though the CFL is not a farm league, some people see it as a bit of a minor league because these American guys' dreams not playing. This is not their league. They use the CFL as a farm league to get an NFL shot. No. Ivan, they're very talented. I know they're talented CFL, but they're unknown to Canadian people CFL. And your league is struggling with growth. So I told you have two answers. Either the fans in Canada just don't care about Canadian football. There's no bigger market for it, or there is a bit of a bigger market for it, but it's with your star Canadian players. It's not with your star American players. Mainly the quarterbacks, the franchise quarterbacks. That's the key. You have to market them at the universities. Yeah. And when you market the Canadian players at the universities, a lot of the university students are familiar with these players because they saw them play at university. They know they got drafted. Whereas the American guys, when they speak at universities, some fans are familiar with them and everything. They're CFL stars, but they don't know anything about these guys, man. They're from a different country. They don't even know what school they played at. They don't even know where these guys are from. They're just guys who come up here who happen to be stars from a different country, but the fans love them and everything, but they don't know anything about these guys, man. And the Canadian players speak too, but barely any of them are stars. They're all special team players. Yeah, but Ivan, they're still pro players. Yeah, they're pro players, CFL, the Canadian players, but they're not stars. They're all playing special teams, second, third string. Your first, second, third round draft picks, man. It's embarrassing, you know. That's from Sarah. BJ Ivan, man, that's cold, I know. That's why a lot of Canadian draft picks, they call it quits after like 5, 4, 6 seasons. They just quit and retire. Because they just bounce around teams with limited reps. They play special teams and they just retire. Yeah, fuck this. Pro football's not fun. I'm not a star player. I'm a first round draft pick. I'm bouncing around teams on a practice roster. I'm not a star player. This is bullshit, man. I quit. You retire. and they pursue other career opportunities. And the CFL lost out on a lot of amazing Canadian talent over the decades, right? A lot of good Canadian amazing talent the CFL lost because of their bias. Their American bias, obviously. Those are crazy people, man. Yeah, man. Blind by the American talent. And the board of governors in the CFL and all those guys are all Canadian guys. But even they're blind by the American talent. Yeah, Ivan, they're blind by the American talent. They're Canadian. Yeah, they're all Canadian. But even the Canadians, the Canadian board of governors in the CFL are blind by the American talent because it's been passed down to the league. It's been passed down. The bias has been passed down to the league since the league started. Been going on for 50, 60, 70 years since the league started. Obviously. So CFL has a good what? Obviously. CFL started about 70 years ago the league started. Even before the NFL. Obviously. And they've been bringing up all these American guys for decades since the league started. And the league is only peaking at 300 million after all those decades. So minimal growth, man. CFL should be doing 500, 600 million at least annually in revenue, man. Yeah. What do you think the CFL's peak? Probably 600 or perhaps maybe 700 million around there is a CFL's peak. 650, maybe 700 million at most is its peak. The CFL could peak at. But I don't think it'll peak any higher than that. 650 million is its peak around there in the CFL. 550 to 650 million, I'd say, around there is CFL's peak in revenue. And the CFL's trying to get to that peak because they know if the league gets to that 550 million peak, they can raise the cap to like 9 million, and TSN will be willing to pay them more money. TSN will be willing to give the CFL maybe 70 million a season. Per season, and because right now the TSN gives the CFL $15 million a year annually for the league, and they haven't given them any raise because the CFL's not making TSN any more money because the television ratings are not that good in the CFL, right? Yeah. What's the average television rating in the CFL? I think it's like 500,000 views a game. 500,000 people in Canada tune into the CFL games on average. Sometimes they even drop to 300,000 people tuning in. And they peak at 500, maybe 600,000 people tuning in. But the Grey Cup is pretty good. The Grey Cup, they get like 6 million to 10 million people in Canada watching. Obviously. That's pretty good. But for their season games, they're only peaking at like 500,000 people in Canada watching. Obviously. And I've watched CFL games. CFL games is a high quality football. It's almost as good as the NFL. It's not the NFL. It's almost as good as the NFL. And yet, it's entertaining football, and yet people in Canada don't care about the game. So it's not about the quality of the game, CFL. It has to be something else. Either there's just not a big market for football in Canada, a bigger market for football in Canada, or they just don't really care about your star American players who you're marketing to them when they watch your games. And they see your commercials on your TSN promo, they don't really care about these guys. Obviously. I don't mean to be dick, that's just the truth. One of those answers are true, obviously. Don't hit me, guys, I'm saying, yeah. Alright, it's just a fucking dick, man. Why would we be an asshole? It's just the truth, right? But maybe the Canadian talent doesn't make a difference. Like, you can market the Canadian players too, and the revenue will still stay the same. It might not make a difference. But something tells me that's the key to fixing it, man. It's the Canadian talent. It's right. The answer is right in front of the CFL's eyes. It's just too blind to see it. Obviously. It's almost like the CFL has been blinded by the American talent. They kept bringing up all these guys for decades, and they draft all the best players in Canada for decades. Barely of them are stars, barely of them are legends. All these American guys are up here are legends. And they have like stagnant, like minimal growth. Obviously, it's almost like the answer's right in front of their eyes. It's a Canadian talent. That's the key. But they're too blind to see it because they're blinded by the American talent. Why do you think the CFL's blind to see it? Because they're blinded by the American talent. They think that's the best way to grow it in Canada, to grow the league in Canada. Because they're so talented, they put a show on television, obviously. Yeah, and because they put on higher quality football, more of a show on television, more people will be more interested in games, and that's how we go to the league. I get that, CFL. It's a bit higher quality football, but like you're selling American product to the Canadian people, and the Canadian people are unfamiliar with the product you're trying to sell to them. Obviously. Like, yeah, when they're CFL stars, some of the fans know about them and everything, they love and everything, but like they don't know anything about these guys' history. They don't even know where these guys came from. They're from a different country. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's why your league's not, you wonder why your league's not growing. Oh, that's funny, I know. You're a genius, I know. You know I'll blow your mind, but I know I'll blow your mind away. Yeah. Why do the GMs in the CFL care when they lose a star players in the NFL? Of course they do. They're pissed off when they lose a star players in the NFL, obviously. But like they don't really care that much because they can just grab more guys from the States, right? Like, yeah, Ivan, we don't really care. We can just grab more guys from the States, Ivan, if we lose players in the NFL. Yeah, I get that, CFL. You wonder why our league's not growing, man. You want to grow the league with American players who are only here by default. Like they never would have played football here, CFL, if had they got their NFL opportunity. They never would have saw these guys. They're here by default. And then you market these star players to the CFL because they're star players of your league. And some of those guys who you're marketing are using the CFL as a formula to get another NFL shot. Obviously. So it's tough for some football fans in Canada to take these players seriously and to resonate with these guys. Because some of them are using our league, our fucking pro league, to get another NFL shot. So they never really want to be here. Instead of marketing the Canadian players who got drafted, whose dream is playing here in the CFL. They don't care about the NFL, the Canadian players. Their dream is playing here. They don't care about the NFL. Come on. Why have you star Canadian players go to the NFL? Rarely. You might have maybe one guy go, and the other star players they don't care because they're making enough money up here. Obviously. And they know their chances of playing in the NFL starting in the NFL is not high, and the NFL is not their league. NFL's for the American football players. The CFL's for the Canadian football players. That's why the CFL drafts the best Canadian players. But even though they draft the best Canadian players, they just bring up all these American guys and have them in the stars up here instead of their own draft picks. Obviously, yeah. And they're pissed off that their league is struggling with growth. Obviously. Yeah. And they televise the draft on TSN nationwide. They draft the best players in Canada to build hype. And maybe for every draft class, maybe 6 players in that draft class. Out of all the 60 5 players who were drafted, maybe 5 of those players get to be stars. And the rest are bust picks and they're on the practice roster and they're all bust picks, man. And the CFL wonders why the fans don't really care about their league and they don't take their league seriously. It's because of the American talent problem in your league, CFL. But there are some Canadians who obviously disagree with me. I think that's a bad idea, man. I think you should have the best way to grow the league is the American product, Ivan. Well, I'm talking to all you Canadian football fans. I see what you're saying. They're very talented. But the CFL has been trying their best to market all these guys, and yet no one in Canada really cares. The league has minimal growth, man. So obviously something is not right. Either fans in Canada just don't care about Canadian football, or there is a bigger market for it, but it's with the Canadian talent, mainly the quarterbacks, not the American talent. Obviously. One of those answers is obviously true. You're a genius, I know. Yeah, Ivan, one of those answers is true. Either the fans in Canada just don't care about Canadian football, regardless of a nationality, whoever the CFL markets, or there is a bigger market for it, but it's with the Canadian players. It's not with the American players. The fans in Canada will be more invested in the league with the Canadian product more than the American product, especially the quarterbacks. Obviously. But the CFL closes the doors on Canadian quarterbacks. Canadian quarterbacks in the CIS, how bad is it, Ivan? CFL scouts don't care about Canadian quarterbacks. They just brush them off. But Trey Ford was such an amazing quarterback. He actually got drafted in the first round because he's a rare talent. He's a rare Canadian quarterback talent, Trey Ford. And Nathan Rourke was also rare talent too. That's why those guys got drafted. But before that, like now there is a little bit of opportunity for some Canadian quarterbacks. As 2 Canadian quarterbacks got drafted. No, 3 Canadian quarterbacks got drafted. Brandon Smalley got drafted too. Because Brandon Bridge is the one who paved the way for the Canadian quarterbacks. Once Brandon Bridge started for like 6 games, he paved the way for some Canadian quarterbacks. And Nathan Rook came along. He got drafted like 2nd round. He's starting quarterback for the BC Lions. And Trey Ford was drafted in the 1st round in 2021, 2022. He was such an amazing quarterback. The scouts loved him and they drafted him. He had a starting opportunity last year, but he flopped. Obviously, he didn't do that good. Obviously, and they replaced him with the American guy. But the American guy didn't do any better than Trey Ford. The Edmonton Oilers didn't make the playoffs. The Edmonton Eskimos didn't make the playoffs. They still had a losing season. And yet that American quarterback is given another opportunity to start again this season because the CFL limits the opportunities for Canadian players, and Canadian players have shorter windows than the American players. That's how it works. CFL doesn't trust the Canadian players the way they trust the American players. Yeah, we don't trust the Canadian players, Ivan. They perform bad for 5 games or done, Ivan. We replace it with an American guy. And if an American guy performs bad for 5 games or maybe a whole season, you give that guy another opportunity. Because you're blinded by the American guy. Yeah, Ivan, they're so talented. We trust them. That's how we go to the league, Ivan. We trust the American guys, Ivan. We don't trust the Canadian players, Ivan. We don't trust them. They're not good enough. No, they're amazing players. They're just not on the NFL level, guys. You're just blind by American talent. Ivan, it's cold, man. I know. It's cold, man. What if the league thrives in like 20 years with the American talent? If the league thrives in 20 years and with the American talent, the league is now pulling in $500 million in revenue, then it worked out for the good. I was wrong. Maybe the American talent is the way to go for the CFL. I was wrong, obviously. If the league can hit $500 million in 20 years, we'll see what happens. But if the league is only doing maybe $330 million in 20 years, then something's not right. The league has minimal growth. It's struggling, obviously. It's not having substantial growth, obviously, right? It's struggling, obviously, with growth. Got some Sarah? Yeah. Witness the best players in Canada compete for the Grey Cup. You market that, and you have the franchise quarterbacks who got drafted speak at their university, and you market them. The thing could be huge in like 15, 20 years, guys. You can do like $200 million more in revenue in 20 years. Ivan, they're not as talented, Ivan. They don't put on as good quality football. No, they put on amazing quality football, CFL. You're just blind by the American talent. It's not on NFL's level. Obviously. Some Sarah. Yeah. That's why a lot of the American star players in the CFL, they don't really get endorsement deals. They don't get big endorsement deals because it's tough for Canadian companies to endorse players from a different country who no one in Canada knows anything about, man. That's why they get shitty endorsement deals in the CFL. Obviously. Does the CFL have endorsement deals? Yeah, they do, but they're shitty small deals. Like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 deals are not big deals, man. Because the league is not big enough, right? It's not that big of a league, right? It's not even close to the money that the other players are making in the other big pro leagues. Endorsement deals in CFL are a joke. Players don't make that much money off that, right? Yeah. Ivan, it's cold, man. I know. It's cold, man. Yeah. Ivan, what do you think is the key with the Canadian talent? It's all about the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks, that's the key. The Canadian franchise quarterbacks. You have to really market them, do nationwide commercials, market them, and you have them be franchise players. The fans are going to love the Canadian star quarterback CFL, especially when they become CFL legends. Russ Jackson's approved CFL. The fans love Russ Jackson more than having even Matt Dunnigan and Ricky Ray and all these guys. Why? Because he's Canadian. He's homegrown talent. Obviously, the fans love these American legends, CFL legends too, but they don't really care about them that much compared to the way they care about Russ Jackson. They love Russ Jackson a lot more, obviously. And they have a trophy named after Russ Jackson at the University Awards. That's how you know, man. Yeah. Do any of these American CFL legends CFL have trophies named after them? None of them have a trophy named after them. Russ Jackson has a trophy named after him, man. Fucking trophy. Like, that's how you know they respect him a lot. The fans really love Russ Jackson. Ottawa native, by the way. He's from Ottawa, by the way, right? He's from Ottawa. He lives in Ottawa, too. He lives in Ottawa. I think my youngest brother met him. Yeah. They have a trophy named after him at the football university awards. When the best players are competing for the award at the university awards for the football players, they have an award, a Russ Jackson award, named after him, as part of the award for the players, man. They don't have any of that for Anthony Gabriel or Matt Dunning, and that's how you know the fans care way more about Russ Jackson than all these American guys you're bringing up here. Yeah, we know that, Ivan, but like the Canadian players and all is talented. Yeah, you're blind by the American talent, CFL. That's why you have to get rid of these guys, man. So if I was CFL commissioner, yeah, if you want to get rid of your blindness, you have to get rid of the American talent who wants in the work. Yeah. All right, if you think Trey Ford is done, yeah, man, he's done, man. He had his opportunity. He signed a huge deal, obviously. Why did Edmonton take a chance on Trey Ford? Because Trey Ford, when he had limited reps the previous seasons, he was putting on a show on television. He was doing pretty good. And the Edmonton GM even said, I think Trey Ford can be a Grey Cup winning quarterback. And they signed him to a mega deal in CFL standards, right? And he flopped with the Edmonton Eskimos. The team they started off like 1-5, 0-5, and he lost his starting position. I told you, if you're a Canadian player in the CFL, you perform bad, and the coach replaces you with an American player, chances are you're done. You're not going to get another opportunity again. I don't think Trey Ford will get another opportunity as a starting quarterback in the CFL. I think he's done. He's done because you have the American you have the American bias in the CFL. And that's cold, I know. They didn't even give Trey Ford maybe a year to grow. Like, you give all these American quarterbacks CFL like at least one season to grow, but Canadians you just don't give them an opportunity to grow because we don't trust them, Ivan. We don't trust them the way we trust the American players, Ivan. Yeah, it's sad, man. They downgrade the Canadian talent, CFL. Ivan, that's cold, I know. Mike Riley, obviously. I remember back in 2013 when he signed with the Edmonton Eskimos as the new franchise starting quarterback. First season, even though he put up amazing numbers, his team had a losing season, man. They went like 5-13. They didn't make the playoffs. They gave him room to grow, and he took his team to the Grey Cup a couple years later. Obviously. But if it's a Canadian player who performs bad for one season, the chances are the coaches are not going to give him that player another opportunity because they limit opportunities for a Canadian. They don't trust the Canadian players. Yeah, we don't trust the Canadian players. They perform bad. We got to have the American guys jump in on them because they're so talented, and we don't trust the Canadian players. Yeah, they dominate Canadian talent. See, it's sad, man. Yeah. But Nathan Rourke is home. Nathan Rourke won the MVP as a Canadian quarterback. Nathan Rourke is arguably the best quarterback in the CFL, guys. He's Canadian, man. He is probably the best quarterback in the CFL right now, right? Nathan Rourke, right? He won MVP and most of the time Canadian last year. He won the whole MVP for the league, Nathan Rourke. Passed for 5,000 yards, and he had like 31, 35 touchdowns. Yeah, he's an amazing quarterback, Nathan Rourke. He's amazing. That's why he's the highest paid player in the league. Because Nathan Rourke is actually rare Canadian talent. He's so amazing, he's actually a starting quarterback as a Canadian. He's an amazing quarterback. He was so good, he had an NFL opportunity, man. He went to the NFL. But I told you, the NFL, he did good in the preseason. He scored on his first drive. He did better than the other quarterback, and they put him on the practice roster, man. Yeah, man, because the NFL has a bias towards Canadian players. Yeah, we don't like you Canadian guys. Yeah, so if the NFL's going to limit us Canadian players to shine in the NFL, why are you giving all these American guys the time to shine for your CFL when this is not even their country, this is not their league, and everyone want to be here, no names, and yeah. Sarah? Yeah. Ivan, what's the key for the GMs to not worry about the American players going to the NFL? The league has to grow, man, to like at least 500 million, and they have to raise the cap. That way they can pay the players more. That way they're not tempted to go to the NFL. Once the cap's at 9 million, the GMs won't have to worry that much about their star players going to the NFL, the American guys. Because receivers can now make like 500, even 600K, 400K in the CFL, QB money. And defensive players make 300, 450K in the league, and if they're making that money, they're going to decline NFL opportunities because they're making an amazing living up here. They're not making NFL money, but they're living a rich life with that money. Obviously. Yeah. Ivan, who are most of the star players in the CFL for the Canadian players? The linemen. Ivan, that's cold. No. The linemen, man. Yeah. Most teams in CFL start about like 5 Canadian linemen. Maybe 4 Canadian linemen and 1 American lineman. That's how it works, right? 4 Canadian linemen start, and they have like 1 American lineman. That's how it works. And the only position where there's like no difference in quality with talent are the linemen. The Canadian linemen are just as good as the American linemen that CFL brings up here. The Canadian linemen are just as good as the American linemen in the CFL. That's the only position where there's no difference in quality. In the skill positions, there's a little bit of a difference in quality. The American players are a bit more athletic, and the Canadian players are a bit more raw. Obviously, that's why the CFL scouts love Canadian linemen. They salivate over the Canadian linemen. That's the one position where the CFL scouts love. That's why most first-round picks are the linemen in the CFL. No, in the NFL, most first-round picks are like the quarterbacks, and the CFL is not like that. No, in the CFL, most of the first-round picks are the linemen guys. The non-skill position. That's cool. I know. Because they downgrade the Canadian talent. Yeah, Ivan, we downgrade Canadian talent. Like the most important position for us for Canadian players is the lineman, Ivan, because they're not as skilled, it's not as risky. It's a non-skill position, Ivan. That's what we love. That's why they love the CFL scouts, the Canadian linemen, and receivers too. Yeah, receivers and the linemen are the 2 positions whereby the Canadian players are like most of them are first-round picks in most cases. The receivers and the linemen. Because most of the star players in the CFL are the linemen and the receivers, right? Because receivers is not that risky. It's not that risky, obviously. And a lineman is not that risky either because it's a non-skill position. It's a non-skill position, a lineman, right? Yeah. Yeah. And that's why the CFL and TSM panel, they barely talk about any of the Canadian players because most of the star players are the linemen, but because it's a non-skill position, they don't talk about the linemen. And they'll talk about maybe 3 maybe star CFL, Canadian CFL receivers. And then the rest are all these American guys, the American running backs, the American quarterbacks, the American corners, the American linebackers, the American free safeties, and all that stuff, right? And yet no one really cares, guys, when they talk about these guys. Obviously. I know it, Ivan, because when I see the CFL and TSM panel talk about these American guys, yeah, it's cool and everything, and they're stars. I don't really care, guys. Like, they're American, they're from a different country. I know they never want to be here. I know some of them are using our league as a farm to get an NFL shot. You know what I'm saying? And I care more about the Canadian players, obviously. And another reason why I know the people in Canada don't really care because the league is struggling with growth for television ratings. No one in Canada really cares about the CFL games, obviously. As CFL peaks at about 500,000 people in Canada watching every game around there. Obviously, they peak at that, right? Because I saw the state of the league when the CFL commissioner talks about the state of the league when the press interviews the CFL commissioner, and I always get the same result. Yeah, we did the CFL average like 500,000, 450,000 viewers, and the CFL commissioner acts like the league is successful and it has growth, but I mean it's all bullshit. Yeah, it's smoke and mirrors, right? Yeah. Yeah, our television ratings have increased by 25,000 or something like that. Like that makes a difference. You know what I'm saying? The league has done like 12 million more in revenue. This league is having growth, and we look forward to growing this league in the future. You know what I'm saying? They say that it's all bullshit. It's smoke and mirrors. Am I right, Jay Ford? Ivan, that's true. Almost done, guys. Hope you guys are on my CFL show. Obviously. What's the rule in the CFL? You have to start at least 7 Canadian players. The reason why the CFL does it, that way they can give some Canadian players an opportunity to be stars. That's why they have to, okay, have every team start at least 7 Canadian players, but the rest of the players have them be the American guys. Unless there's a few other Canadian players who are just amazing players. Some teams might start maybe 8 Canadian players, but it's very rare. Usually they start the minimum 7 Canadian players. Then the rest of the players are the American guys. That's how it works. It's part of the rule. And the people have to listen to the Board of Governors. Yeah, that's how it works, guys. We draft the best players in Canada, start 7 players, have them play pro football, but like they're not going to be stars. Have the American guys come up here and have them be the stars. Man, it's part of the rule. You have to listen, obviously. It's the bias of the league, right? All right, now it's cold, man. I know. Obviously. That's how it works, right? Yeah. Why do Canadian players know about the bias who get drafted? No, they don't. Well, some of them are probably familiar with it because they watch many CFL games, obviously. But like they don't really know. They're excited when they get that call from the GM, and then once they step with the training camp, they know about the bias. Obviously, they know that they have like a limited opportunities to be stars or start in the league. All these American guys are going to be the stars of it. That's how it works. Obviously, yeah, that's how it works, right? Yeah. But the league is a bit of a healthier position compared to like back in the early 2000s. Yeah, back in the early 2000s, the minimum salary in the CFL was like $35,000. So some players who played in the league have to work like part-time jobs while they play in the league to make a living. Whereas now the minimum salary in the CFL is $70,000. So it's in a bit of a better position, a little bit of growth. So players now are making enough money to pay their bills and feed their family, right? Pay their apartment rent. They can pay their apartment rent with that money. Obviously. That's how it works, right? 70,000 for pro football for minimum salaries is good money. That's pretty good money. Not NFL money, but you're making a great living with that money. Obviously. But the CFL is obviously struggling financially with growth. Obviously. Yeah. That's why some CFL draft picks who are eligible for the draft, some of them turn down pro opportunities. They end up just pursuing their other careers Because some of them probably know about the American body. Yeah, my chances of starting in the CFL is not high. Chances are I'm going to be a bust pick, having limited reps, playing special teams. Fuck this. I'll just pursue another career opportunity because they know about it. Some of them know about the American body. It's not stupid. They get drafted, and when I start in the training camp, they know about the bias. Because my elder brother told me stories about that. Yeah. Yeah, all us Canadian draft players sitting on the bench, and the American guys are all the stars up here. And like a few Canadian stars, like one receiver, and like you have 5 starting Canadian linemen, you have one maybe starting Canadian D lineman, and all the stars are all these American guys. In our fucking country, man. And the coaches love them. CFL coaches love the American guys that bring up here. They treat them like gods. Why the coaches treat them like gods? Because they're blind. The CFL believes because the American players are so talented, they're the reason why the league has grown, obviously, because they put on a show on television. That's why the CFL treats them like gods. Yeah, Ivan, we treat them like gods because like the American players are so talented, they put on a show on television. This is the reason why the league has grown, Ivan. I beg to differ, but I mean, that's why they treat them like gods, obviously. They love the American players, CFL. Yeah, Ivan, we love the American talent, man. We salivate over it, man. It's so good, Ivan. Yeah, they're blind by the American talent. CFL. Right, that's funny. No, they're blind by the American talent. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Ivan, are the Canadian players more valuable to the CFL than the American players? Yes, the Canadian players are more valuable to the league than the American players, obviously because they're Canadian, they're more relatable to Canadian people, they have higher market value, they're more known talent, and they're very talented in Canada, and the CFL drafts them, and they know this is the CFL's for the Canadian players, obviously. So the CFL knows the Canadian players are more valuable than the American players, but yet they just choose to start all these American guys who are not as valuable to the league. Like it's almost like the answer's right in front of your eyes, CFL. You know the Canadian players are more valuable than the American guys, but yet you bring all these American guys up and you have them be the stars up here when you know they're less valuable to the league, and you wonder why your league's not growing because you're just blinded by the talent type. We know the Canadian players are more valuable to the league, but they're not as talented. The American guys, they may not be as valuable to the league, but the more talent, they put much more talent. That's why we go to league, Ivan. It's blind by American talent. The answer's right in front of your eyes. Obviously. So, Ivan, if you're a star Canadian player in the CFL, the teams will pay the Canadian player more than the American players. Yeah, in most cases, the star Canadian players in CFL make more money than the star American players because they're more valuable to the league. They're rare Canadian talent. They're rare talent in Canada. Whereas the American guys are not as valuable because they're expendable, right? Oh, yeah, we guys been saying, yeah, like if they lose this player in the NFL, they can just grab a bunch of more guys from the States. So it's like they're not that valuable. They're not as valuable to the league, right? Because there's so much they can just grab more players from the States, right? With the Canadian players, it's not like that. Like the Canadian players played in C4 are the best players who got drafted in Canada, who the CFL drafted in the league. So they're very talented in Canada, and they have higher market value because they're Canadian. They're from here. That's why they're more valuable to the league. Whereas the American guys, even though they have a lot of value because they're very talented, they're not as valuable because if they lose a star American player to the NFL, they can just grab more players from the States. Because there's a huge talent pool to choose from in the States, for the GMs and to choose from in the States. That's why they're not as valuable, right? They're expendable. Like, they lose players, they can just grab more players. The Canadian players, it's not like that, because they're very talented in Canada, right? You guys can say, all right, that's funny, I know. Yeah. So the Canadian players are more valuable in market value, obviously, but they're not as valuable in talent, obviously. Well, no, they're valuable in talent too, but the Canadian players are more valuable in market value. The American players are more valuable in just pure talent, in the sense that they put on a show on television. That's why the CFL has the American guys be the stars, because they have a lot of value and talent. They're very talented players, and they put on the show on television. But they don't have much market value over here because they're not from here, man. They're from a different country. Well, you guys said, yeah. Well, that's funny, I know. I hear G's, I know. Yeah. Yeah. As Nathan Rook is the highest paid quarterback in the CFL, I believe. Or I think it's him and Zach Caleros. I think he's making even more than Zach Caleros, because Nathan Rook has a marketing deal with the BC Lions. He's the highest paid quarterback in the league, and he's Canadian. Obviously, because because he's Canadian, he's very talented. We have to pay him more money, Ivan. He's Canadian. Yeah, so you pay the star Canadian receivers, the star Canadian linemen, the star Canadian running backs, you know what I'm saying, the star Canadian quarterbacks, on average more money than the star American players, because they're more valuable to the league, CFL. So you know they're more valuable, but yet you just choose to bring these guys up here and have them be the stars, the American guys, when you know they're not as valuable to the league. Like, it's almost like the answer's right in front of your eyes. Like, I don't get it. Well, even they're not as talented. Yeah, you downgrade the Canadian talent, CFL. It's embarrassing. Come on. Yeah. I have 6 months left. Why, the Canadian players seriously make more money than star American players? Yeah, they do. They do. I'm not lying. If you're a star Canadian player in the CFL, the teams will pay you more. They'll offer that player more money than even the star American players, because they're rare Canadian talent. Obviously. Yeah, it's harder to find amazing Canadian talent than it is finding American talent. That's why the Canadian players are more valuable, because they're rare talent in Canada. They're the best players in Canada. The American guys are not the best players in the States, and it's easier to find an amazing American player than it is finding an amazing Canadian player. That's why the Canadian players are more valuable to the league. Does that make sense? Yeah. And they also have higher market value because they're from here, they're Canadian, they got drafted, this is their league. They're more valuable to the GMs, obviously. But the star American players are valuable to the GMs too, but they're not as valuable. That's why they don't bargain for as much money. In most cases, the Canadian star players make more. But there are some star American players who can make more than some of the star Canadian players sometimes, obviously. But in most cases, the star Canadian players are making even more than the star American players in the CFL. In most cases, right? Yeah. Yeah, even the American players are more, they're more expendable. They're expendable players. If they lose these 2 players to the NFL, the GMs just grab more players, man. The States, right? That's why they're not as valuable to the GMs. Yeah. Because they can just grab more guys from the States, right? There's so much players to choose from in the States. They can just grab more players. That's how it works, right? Yeah. Yeah. Supply and demand, right? Yeah, there you go. Supply and demand. CFL would never get really breaking that. Yeah, we're never going to do that, Ivan. Like, the talent that's how we're going to Ivan. Yeah, I disagree. But I hope League rolls right. Anyways, guys, this is our guys' little show. Sorry, man, I got please. Hope you guys enjoy my CFL show. Peace out, guys. Don't hate me, guys.